lunch, buddy. My ass.
I'm on my floor. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the second year of the award at the 6th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1932 and 1933. My guest today is another short, host of the 300 Passions podcast, and a good friend of mine. It's Zita Short. Welcome to the show, Zita.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I have been eagerly anticipating this for quite a while.
Well, thank you for coming on. I've been on your show a few times, and I've always loved it. So now I get the chance to have you on my show.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see how things go.
All right. So this year we have 3 nominees. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Three Little Pigs, directed by Burt Gillett. This is the 3rd nomination and 2nd win for Walt Disney, who won the previous year for Flowers and Trees. This is also the 2nd nomination and 2nd win for the Silly Symphonies franchise. When the short was first released, it became immensely popular and ran in theaters for months, and people considered it to be the most successful animated short in film history. The film tells the classic story of the 3 little pigs, each one building their own house to protect against the big bad wolf. However, the film's most lasting legacy is perhaps through the song "Who is Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf," becoming first an anthem of the Great Depression, then a rallying cry against Hitler during World War II, and also inspiring the title of the famous Edward Albee play, "Who is Afraid of Virginia Woolf." Now, Zita, why don't you start us off? What did you think of the 3 little pigs?
Well, I found it really fascinating. I think through osmosis, perhaps, I had picked up on the themes in this short, despite the fact that I don't think I've actually seen it before. And so it was that weird experience of coming into it with a lot of background knowledge about the story and kind of piecing it together while watching the film itself. But I do think it's incredibly engaging in the way that so many of these Disney shorts are. There's just so much life and kineticism in the way that the characters move on screen. And I do think they have a real sense of how to anthropomorphize animals in a way that doesn't feel creepy in most cases, at least when the characters are meant to be sympathetic and you're meant to be rooting for them. Unlike Luc Besson, Burt Gillett knows how to make you like animals.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that people like to really say about the show. I think I remember reading that Chuck Jones had said like this was the first time that like characters were really brought to life to him through animation. And yeah, that is really seen. Like each of the pigs have such a distinct personality. And like, of course, it's like the first 2 pigs, the ones who build the straw and the twigs, they are a bit similar in terms of their tone. And then you have the 3rd pig, who is a much different. Like the first 2 are very kind of lackadaisical. They don't really care too much about the threats of the wolf or anything. They just want to build their house and then get along to playing the little pipe and the fiddle. Meanwhile, you got the brick house pig, who is very determined and values the importance of work, I guess, and make sure that his house is strong before he can have time to play. And so yeah, these are all distinct characters. And then of course the wolf is a character unto itself. The wolf is also very threatening, and it's interesting to watch this in comparison, like after watching last year's winner of Flowers and Trees, which for you, Zita, it's just kind of a very light little plot kind of short where it's just a bunch of various trees and flowers are kind of dancing around. And then at one point, this gross old tree tries to burn down the heroic couple or whatever. And it's just like, and it's like, yes, there is a sort of character to them, but there isn't as much of a fully formed kind of personality to them. And it's interesting trying to like watching Disney kind of develop their style and animation in real time. And as just like, and one of the things I really like about this category is the ability to do that, because with Disney getting nominated in pretty much every single and winning every single year, you can also kind of chart like Disney's growth from just like this one of the animation studios to becoming such a massive success and eventually creating Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which wasn't the first animated feature film, but is certainly the first truly popular one.
Yes, and I do think in the 30s at least, there is this sense of ambition and willingness to try new things, which I don't think that we have at the moment with Disney. And when they do try to do something new, there's invariably a backlash from a certain type of Disney fan. And I sort of wish that we could go back to the era when it did seem like they were full steam ahead in trying to push the medium forward, instead of, as they are doing now, resting on their laurels and just remaking most of their popular properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really interesting how like Disney then and Disney now, well, they were both still certainly focused about making money first and foremost. Walt back in the day, he knew that in order to make money, he had to bring in something new, something interesting, and something that can really capture like the imagination of the people. Oh, but nowadays it's the foremost thinking is just that that the best way to make money is to remind people of their own past and to remind them of their childhood and stuff. It's not to make things new, it's just to bring the past forward, I guess. And it's so really, while it does achieve the goal of making money, it isn't as artistically interesting, let's say, as something as early Disney was.
Yes. And it is still remarkable how modern a lot of these shots feel, where I don't think that the comedy has necessarily aged poorly or fallen out of favor. And there are several Disney properties where you go, ooh, politically, this is horrific from a modern standpoint. But I think a lot of these ones that, as you said, try to be more frivolous, don't necessarily have an overt political viewpoint, I think do age really well, and you can sort of project your own ideas onto what is happening and say, ooh, actually, this is a deep meditation on ageism or something. But I think it has enough simplicity to kind of appeal to everyone. So, sorry, this is a really simplistic way of saying, wow, Disney, this giant corporate monolith, is really good at appealing to the broadest audience possible. But I suppose my point is they were doing that in a good way at the beginning, where, yes, it's clearly a capitalistic decision, but I don't think it hurt their art at this point in time, and I think they've lost that, where you watch Beauty and the Beast and it's just bland. And I don't think that you get that with Flowers and Trees, for example.
Have you seen Flowers and Trees?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. I didn't expect that. But yeah, it's just like all of these, like a lot of these early shorts in the category are very timeless. Like you get a lot of like the Mickey Mouse shorts or the Tom and Jerry shorts, Looney Tunes, and it's just like, and I remember like before I knew that much about film history, being shocked that like all these shorts were made in like the 30s and 40s. It's just like how is that possible? It's just like these are things that people still care about nowadays. It's just like how could they be made like 70, 80 years ago? Oh, but it's just like that's just how good they are and how like appealing they were to such a wide audience. It's just that they have such a staying power that they can withstand generations, because it's just these, like, they want to, they're so good that they just have the strength to survive, you know. And plus they're good for kids and people, and so yeah.
Yes, of course.
All right. Let's move on to our second nominee then, which is Building a Building, directed by David Hand. This is the fourth nomination for Walt Disney and his second one this year, and the second time he's been nominated against himself, with last year featuring both Flowers and Trees and Mickey's Orphans. And this is also the second nomination for a Mickey Mouse cartoon. This short features the comedic antics of Mickey Mouse, my mortal enemy, who is trying to woo Minnie while working on a construction site, with Pete the cat as the agitated foreman. So I'll start by saying that despite my hatred for Mickey Mouse as a whole, as a presence, I found this short quite tolerable. Like it's not reinventing the art of animation or anything. It's just a simple bit of comedy where it's just like you've got Minnie coming in, singing her little song, like trying to sell box lunches, and Mickey Mouse is like he's working on the building, and but he's distracted by her and is trying to get her attention and all that. It's very lightly cute and whatever. And then of course Pete comes in. First, he gets mad that his worker or is like goofing off on the job, which fair. And also he keeps ruining his blueprints that like Pete is just trying to look at the blueprints for the building that they're building, and it somehow just keeps getting destroyed. And it's like, I understand that I'm not supposed to like Pete. He's the kind of the Bluto of this Popeye and olive oil situation. But also I just kind of feel bad for him because he just wants to do his job, which Mickey Mouse is certainly not interested in doing. But and so I kind of feel bad for him and understand his agitation. Though, of course, later on in the short, it becomes more about Pete trying to take Minnie for himself, and then Mickey Mouse has to save her, which is, of course, bad. And so you just get some slapstick comedy and all that. It's very standard for animated cartoon at this time, and for what it is, it's fine. Like I'm not going to remember it that all. It's just going to blend in with all the other Mickey Mouse shorts at the time, but it's not something I'm going to hate for years to come either. It's fine.
Yes, I found it funny. It sort of reminded me of Paper Man, which would win 80 something years after this, and which I find to be a lot more poignant and moving. But I still find that sort of general theme of having to persevere in order to fall in love, I do think is slightly more sophisticated than what you usually get in this sort of comedic short. And I did kind of appreciate the fact that while the whole, oh no, the cat is going to steal my girl plot line wasn't the greatest, it does feel like Minnie has some agency in the story, and she has some personality traits and characteristics which I sort of appreciated. But I do understand why so far Mickey is not a personal fave of yours.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Mickey Mouse cartoons, and usually, or oftentimes, he just kind of ends up just grating on my nerves because he's such a non-personality in a lot of them. And he has zero
He's the
viable
peace.
traits. He's he's just meant to be this generic kind of people pleaser kind of thing. He's not supposed to be like at all kind of like uh offensive to any sensibilities, let's say. He's just supposed to be this happy go lucky kind of thing, which is just dull and boring, and it's just and it puts him in such stark contrast with Donald and Goofy, who come after this time period. And Donald has emotions. He gets angry. He knows what it is to feel. And Goofy, he's I just love Goofy. Goofy's the best. But yeah, Mickey lacks all of that. And of course, Kristoff, our mutual friend, he has that same immense hatred, but for Minnie Mouse instead, who he feels is just a waste of a character, which he discusses on our last episode. Which I know you can't hear it yet because we're recording before I release these episodes, but he has a amazing rant and in that episode, and I can't wait for you to hear it. But yes, Mickey Mouse is my mortal enemy, and I'll be sure to talk more about that in the future episodes, because Mickey Mouse is nominated, if I remember correctly, a total of 10 times over the history of the category, 8 times being in this early chunk in the 30s and 40s. And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities for me to rant about Mickey Mouse. Anything else for you that you have to say about the short?
No, I think that's mostly how I felt. Maybe one of the problems with it is that it's not the most thought-provoking thing in the world, but I just feel like the plot line is so generic that it really does feel like something that you've seen a million times, where I'm not saying that the other plots were just incredibly original and inventive and changed the way that I thought about traditional storytelling. But I did find them to be more edifying, more exciting, more boundary expanding than what was going on in building a building.
All right. So that's a good point to go on and move on to our third and final nominee, which is A Merry Old Soul, directed by Walter Lantz and Bill Nolan. This is the first nomination for Walter Lantz and the first and only nomination for Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And I mention him despite only getting one nomination ever, because for those who don't know, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was a character originally created by Walt Disney and iWorks for Universal Studios when Universal wanted to get into the cartoon business. The character was a bit of a success, but Disney didn't like working for another studio, and he wanted to own the rights to his own characters. So Disney left Universal and created another character to replace Oswald, Mickey Mouse. Anyway, The Merry Old Soul starts with Oswald getting a dental checkup, when suddenly radio announcement is heard that old King Cole has the blues. Then a series of references to popular celebrities at the time come in to sing a song and do some comedy to try and cheer up old King Cole. There is also a pie fight. Zita, what do you think of our final nominee?
So this is a weird one in that it does feel a bit muddled. It's kind of a mess in some ways, but sort of a glorious mess at times, I felt. And I also found it interesting that this does seem to be one of the earlier cases of them including these celebrity references in a cartoon short that is ostensibly for children. And while I think that trend later on could become kind of annoying, where there's content in there for the parents. I assume it seemed relatively innovative at the time, and I sort of liked that touch in there. It was a bit unexpected, and when it wasn't the most sophisticated celebrity based satire in the world, it was still ahead of its time, I felt.
Well, I don't know if this is like the first short to do this, but I know it's certainly not the last. I can think of plenty of shorts that would like just kind of throw a bunch of celebrity parodies and cameos at you, including another nominee in this category later on, at least one other nominee. Uh, Mother Goose Goes Hollywood, which is pretty similar to this one. It has a bunch of celebrities acting out all these different nursery rhymes, and it's just like the song that they sing to Old King Cole is about all these nursery rhyme references, and Mother Goose Goes Hollywood is a Disney cartoon as well. So it's I don't know. I think that's just a very funny thing. Anyway, I don't like this. I don't like this short at all. I hate this.
It does have some problematic
I even with
elements.
so the problematic elements, let's just tell the audience, is that if one of the celebrities that is parodied is Al Jolson, who is famous for his minstrel blackface act, and he gets a significant portion of it in full blackface, or at least animated blackface, which is, you know, bad and awkward and awful to look at. And but even if he wasn't in this, I would still just hate it because like I said, there are a lot of shorts like this. I've seen a lot of them, and I don't really like them at all. I think like it's just they're all just kind of the same, where it's just like a parade of all these celebrities. And for me, the point of it just seems to be, look at the celebrity I recognize. Isn't that funny? And just doing that a billion times is not entertaining to me. Uh yeah, I just kind of hated watching this. And it's just, and also I think this short just is just very poorly animated too. Like it doesn't seem like this is something that like really had any kind of passion for it behind the scenes. Like it was just kind of churned out in a factory with like 50 other shorts that year, and then this one just happened to get a nomination. And for some reason, uh yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. Uh, the only part I would say that I kind of liked about it was the pie fight near the end, because that one at least resembled comedy to me. uh, like, yeah, people throwing pies at each other is a very base kind of comedy, but it is still comedy. It is something I see and recognize as something funny. Um, that didn't happen during the rest of the short.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from in that the culture of including celebrity based jokes is often very lazy, and the humor is just based on, oh, I can identify who that person is, instead of actually commenting on that celebrity's public persona or having an interesting observation about them. And so you could accuse this film of being the first in a long line of those people who make the scary movies
Yeah.
and date movie and those films where the whole point is just ha 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 ha. We know a lot of films within this genre, and we are going to, in our low budget way, include references to all of them, and they're not going to be smart references. It's just going to be, wow, isn't that similar to that shot from Alien? And it's just unbelievably stupid. And so I
Exactly.
don't think this is as bad as one of those films, but I can see how it did lead to the dumbing down of a lot of this type of comedy.
Yeah, it's just not for me. And I guess I can't understand why people would like it, because it is, there is, I guess, some inherent comedy or something into seeing a celebrity you recognize being drawn in this style and then doing something stupid. Uh, but yeah, it's just not for me.
Hmm.
And I think the only time I've ever liked it is there's this one it's a Looney Tunes short, I think, and there's just a bunch of celebrities in like this lounge, and it's like they are interacting with each other too. And it's just like imagining how these celebrities or their personas interact with each other. And it is fun. That one is kind of funny to me. Um, because I think some of the interactions are interesting. And also, just the way they draw some of the celebrities is so garish and ugly that it turns around and becomes beautiful to me. Like it was like, what a hot mess that like Clark Gable or like Peter, like what they do to Peter Lorre. Uh, Peter Lorre specifically, like he shows up in a lot of Looney Tunes cartoons, just because I think it's just because he has such an interesting face that they love to draw it or
Yes.
something.
Oh, the eyes.
The eyes, yes. Oh, yeah.
It's still funny though, going from where he plays a child murderer, to being a supporting character in Looney Tunes shorts.
You know, I maybe M would be better if it was done as a Looney Tune. Who knows?
Ooh, oh.
Maybe. I love M, but like I think we should try it as a Looney Tune.
Hmm.
Anyway, now that we've discussed all three nominees, let's rank them from worst to best. And since there's three nominees, it should be rather simple. Uh, you go first. Who's your number three?
So at number 3, I have Building a Building. I just found it to be the blandest. I know in our discussion, I did sort of come around to your side in thinking of uh, the Merry Old Soul as a bit of a lazy comedy in some ways, but at the time, I just found it to be more engaging and thought provoking than Building a Building. And I had it at second, The Merry Old Soul, and then rather expectedly, I have Three Little Pigs at first. I think they made the right decision and awarded the right short film.
All right. I feel like my opinion is pretty obvious based on listening to this episode. I have the Merry Old Soul in third because it just lacks any kind of all its attempts at humor fall flat for me, as just I can't really understand why this would get nominated. Uh, for second, I have Building a Building, which is fine. That's about it. It's just fine. It's a generic short, but whatever. And we agree on our number one, which is that Three Little Pigs is, we both had a lot of praise for it. It's just a really solid, great short. And it, I think we can both agree that it deserves this kind of long lasting legacy that it's had. And yeah, it's just a really good short. And like, it's not, uh, it's exactly what you expect of it, which is just a kind of retelling of the tale of the Three Little Pigs. But it it's kind of so good that this short is kind of the definitive version of that tale. Like I think this is what we think of when we think of the Three Little Pigs. Even if you haven't seen it, you this is what you have in your mind because it's just had that much kind of cultural relevancy. Uh, so yeah. Uh, is there any final thoughts that you have for Azita? Anything you want to share or promote?
Well, I just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to finally go deep when it comes to this category. Obviously, I, a couple of years ago, sort of really got into the big categories: Best Picture, Best Actress, the screenplay categories, but I have neglected some of these smaller categories. And obviously, following you and Christoph, who have obsessively gone through categories like this, it's sort of funny but also discouraging sometimes, where on Letterboxd you'll sort of talk about the struggle of getting through some of these films, and I think, oh wow, it seems sort of difficult and painful sometimes to get through the really boring stuff. And from what I've read, the documentary categories seem to be more torturous, but I did find it sort of fun to get into my first proper year. And I think having this excuse in place really motivated me to do it. So thank you for finally getting me engaged.
Thank you for engaging. uh, yeah, that is kind of one of the main goals of this podcast for me, is that to just shine a light on what I think there are many riches that can be found in this category, if only people would dare to venture into it. And that's why a lot of the upcoming guests are going to be people who have zero kind of experience with the category, and it's just that, and a lot of it will be about just like their reaction to just these obscure films that no one has ever thought about since their nomination. And you are right that it can be really difficult sometimes, especially with the live action shorts and documentary shorts, which can be just so torturous and god awful sometimes. But I think overall, like, especially with this category, the animated short category, there is just so much, there's so much more beauty than you would initially expect in it. And especially when it comes, like, first of all, you have like the first 30 years of the category is a bunch of these like long-lasting characters, like I mentioned earlier. And then later on, you get to a lot of these independent shorts and stuff. And then you get to Pixar and stuff. It's a very fascinating history to me, and I want to share that. So thank you for coming on, and thank all of you for listening. And that wraps up this episode of the Short Podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.